Hello, Father Bob. How are
Hi,
you?
Jim. Good.
And I'll probably be referring to you as Bob because I know this guy. I've known him for a few years now, and I call him Bob. So I hope no one's scandalized by that, and especially you, Father.
Not at all.
Thank you. Thank you. Father Bob Pierson comes to us from Collegeville, Minnesota, St. John University, which is in central Minnesota, which is very near ground zero of Garrison Keeler's Lake Wobegon area. Beautiful campus there at St. John's. And Bob is a Benedictine monk. He is a priest and monk with the Benedictine Abbey in Collegeville. Bob was in campus ministry for a number of years at St. John's University. We'll talk a little bit about that. And at present, he is the guest master at the guest house at St. John's University, which sits next to the beautiful Abbey Church on campus. And Bob also has other responsibilities, but his main one is one of great hospitality to many of us who pass through to be on retreat or to be in meetings or simply to be at rest in that beautiful spot. So, Bob, again, welcome to you. Glad you're aboard. We've invited you because
Thank you.
You've been a courageous voice with regard LGBTQ dignity, and we're going to get into that soon here. But I want to ask you one question. I have a fascination with Benedictine spirituality and Benedictine life, and wondering, as you were prior to entering the Abbey, what was your greatest attraction about Benedictine life?
Well, I'd thought of a call to priesthood for some time, but the thought of being a priest all by myself in the cornfields of Iowa didn't really appeal to me all that much. And so it was community life that really drew me. I was a student here in college for 4 years, so I got to know a number of the monks, and I saw the example that they gave, both with the students and with each other. And so it was a community life that drew me to join the Abbey.
Nice. And while you were at St. John's in campus ministry, you made a pretty momentous decision, a decision I think that few priests make. You came out to the St. John's community and really to the world because it became public very quickly. And I remember I didn't know you then, but I heard about you on the radio and I think even on the news. This was news, at least here in Minnesota. And
Yep.
Can you say a little bit about what surrounded that decision and what precipitated that decision?
Well, I'm a person who continues to recover from anxiety and depression, and one of the issues that was big in my treatment was coming to terms with my sexuality and the fact that being gay is a gift. And in the fall of 2005, there was rumors going around that the Vatican was going to come out with a document that said that gay men could not be good priests. And immediately I started feeling that depression coming back, and I thought, I got to stand up to this. I got to do something. And eventually I decided what I needed to do was to come out in opposition to that document and say, this is baloney. There are lots of gay men who are priests, and they're good priests. At that point, I'd been a priest for 25 years, and that document was not true. And I knew at the time that if I came out in opposition to the document, there would be a lot of opposition from other places that would make life here at St. John's in campus ministry very difficult. And so in order to save myself a good deal of grief, as well as to save the university administration, I decided to resign my position in campus ministry at the same time that I came out, so that so the university didn't have to face all that pressure and eventually have to struggle with whether they should fire me or not.
How did the students at St. John's, for those of you who don't know, and many of you probably don't, but St. John's is an all-men's school. Just a few miles away is an all-women's school, St. Benedict's. But how did the students receive that news, Bob?
Well, those that I heard from were very supportive. There was some sadness, of course, because I think I was doing a good job as campus pastor. But yeah, I got a lot of support from students.
Good. Were you had you already been out to your family and close friends?
I was out to my parents and to a few close friends.
Yeah.
And when I started talking about doing this, someone said to me, this is going to become big news. And I didn't believe him at first, but I thought, well, if it does become news, then I better come out to my family and the rest of my friends so they don't read it in the newspaper. And so I sent a letter to all of my siblings and told them what was going on, and they were all very supportive. And I contacted my friends that I hadn't yet come out to, told them, they were all supportive. And so with all of that support, and my religious community as well. And so with all that support, I was able to do it.
There's a lot of gay priests out there. Did you get any positive feedback from priests that you knew and priests that you didn't know?
Yes, a lot. A lot of people saying, I wish I could do that, but I can't because of my position. I think I was one of the few at that time. There were a couple of others that I know of who came out at that time, but there are a lot of priests who are gay and who are celibate and are doing a great job, but they're afraid of the nastiness they would have to endure, including losing their jobs if they were to come out.
You mentioned the church teaching, that, or the document that it's not a church teaching, but the document that threatened to prohibit gay men from entering the seminary, and in fact, in some seminaries, that rule is law. Not in every seminary, but more and more these days. What of the church teachings that reflect positively on queer persons and families to show respect, sensitivity, and compassion to LGBT persons, for instance, which is a teaching of our faith? What does that mean to you?
Well, the Catholic catechism says that homosexual persons are to be treated with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. And I believe that means that we need to treat people like we would treat them any other way. It's just because that they are gay doesn't mean that gives us permission to treat them badly. I mean, as Christians, we believe in the human dignity of every person. And so, regardless of a person's sexual orientation or race or gender or whatever category you might put somebody in, everybody has a right to that respect. And I believe a really important piece of that is, first of all, to listen to people and to find out what their experience is and not judge them until you've actually heard what they have to say and how life is for them. I think today there are way too many church leaders who are making judgments without ever talking to anyone, and their words are hurtful, and they don't even understand it or realize it.
Sometimes I think it's a willful ignorance that they're willfully not asking the questions. They're willfully not stopping to listen because I think they don't want to. They don't want to be challenged out of their comfort zone of challenging a church teaching. If they're a priest or if they're a bishop, sometimes I think it's willful ignorance, which there's got to be a sin for that.
Yes, well, I'm not in a position to judge other people's motivations, but I do know. For example, I was just really impressed when it's about a year ago, Cardinal Schoenborn in Vienna met with a young man who had been elected to their parish council, and his pastor refused to seat him. And the cardinal did the amazing thing of asking himself, what would Jesus do? Mm. And he figured out that Jesus would sit down and talk to the guy and get to know him. And so he invited the young man, whose name was Florian Stengel. He invited Florian and his partner to come to lunch at the bishop's house. And as he visited with them and got to know them, he realized they were really good Catholics. And he was able to uphold the church teaching on one hand, but treat them with real dignity and respect. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, way to go. That's what we need in our leaders.
That was a beautiful moment, and we can get down on our knees and pray that they name this guy Pope in a month.
That would be wonderful. That would be great.
So there's another church teaching, that we should avoid any unjust discrimination against LGBT persons. What does that mean to you, Bob?
Well, I struggle with that word unjust discrimination, because that implies that there is some just discrimination. Mm-hmm. And I don't agree with that. I don't think discrimination is just. I think everyone should be treated the same. Now, I realize, of course, what they're talking about there is the sense that it's okay in some people's minds to discriminate against gay people when it comes to employment, or particularly in jobs like education, or in seminary, for example, that some would say it's not unjust to deny gay men entry into seminary. I don't agree with that. I don't think there is just discrimination. If it's discrimination, it's unjust. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And you preached all of these things very publicly this past summer or early fall. I can't remember what it was. It was in a suburb of Minneapolis here in Minnesota. And
that was June 10th.
That was June.
Yep.
So for our attendees, Minnesota, you may know, was anticipating a ballot initiative in the November elections, a marriage amendment enshrining in the Constitution that marriage is only between a man and a woman. And so that was a big old fight here in Minnesota. And Bob was invited by the main campaign, Minnesotans United for All Families, to speak to a church full of Catholics. Now, it wasn't a Catholic church in which you were speaking. It was a Lutheran church.
Actually, United Methodist.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yep.
Let's put our hats to the United Methodists. And Bob was invited, and Bob accepted this invitation to stand and to speak in front of all of these gathered Catholics. And it was another really beautiful moment that this priest gave us here in Minnesota, and I venture to say, across the nation by your witness. And you stood up and spoke. And Bob, can you say a little bit about what you touched on in that speech?
Well, I was asked to talk about why Minnesotans should vote against the marriage amendment. And I knew that I couldn't do that, I knew that would get me in trouble. So instead I said, well, I can talk about why Minnesotans can vote against the marriage amendment. Mm-hmm. And I talked about what the Catholic catechism says about freedom of conscience and the need to form one's conscience and to follow one's conscience, especially in things like voting. And I talked about, I quoted the catechism. I even quoted a young theologian by the name of Joseph Ratzinger, who? Back in Joseph Ratzinger.
Oh, got it.
Benedictus XVI.
Yeah.
In 1967, he wrote something where he was talking about freedom of conscience, and he said that even more important than obedience to the Pope is obedience to one's conscience. And then I went through why, in my talk, why my conscience was leading me to vote no. But I was very careful not to tell other people how to vote.
You were, indeed. It was an electric moment because here was a priest in Roman collar standing up and speaking, and really not I think in my ears and in most Catholics' ears, you were not challenging church teaching. You were supporting church teaching. This constitutional amendment, is not referred to, in the teachings of the church, and so you were simply supporting church teaching. But that's not the way some of our leaders heard it. Your speech was videotaped and it was put up on YouTube and it actually went viral. I don't know, you may know maybe how many times it was viewed, but it was viewed by thousands of times by folks, and it became news. What were the consequences for you?
Well, I got some real negative feedback from bishops, particularly in Minnesota. Archbishop Neinstedt immediately revoked my faculties for the archdiocese and sent a letter to my abbot telling him that I could not minister in the archdiocese. Since then, I've been disinvited from ministry opportunities in the Crookston Diocese, the New Ulm Diocese, the Duluth Diocese. The only place right now where I'm still doing work is the St. Cloud Diocese, which is my home diocese where St. John's is located.
Weren't you supposed to be leading a retreat as we speak?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, this week I was supposed to be doing a parish mission in 4 rural parishes in the Diocese of New Ulm, but when the bishop got wind that I was the person who was doing it, he canceled it. And what's been the reaction within the walls of the monastery, if I may ask? I guess I would say silently supportive. One of my friends sent me an email, and he said, a lot of us are supporting you, but we're just not able to say anything. And I wrote back and said, well, thank you, but silent support isn't that supportive. Everybody's afraid, and so I assume that a good number of my confreres support me, but those that have told me, I know that. So I would say about 15 to 20 of them have said things, but other than that, I'm not sure. But I think most people support me.
I want to just suspend this conversation briefly to remind attendees that you are more than welcome to submit your questions at any time here. Logan behind the scenes will gather those questions as they come, and then we'll be presenting those questions in the second half hour of the show. So begin thinking and writing and submitting those questions right now if you'd like. Bob, that just must have been so painful to receive that quote unquote silent support. I mean, what was the internal process in this time for you?
Well, I was trying very hard to assume the best. And as I say, a number of people did talk to me, so it wasn't like I wasn't getting any feedback.
Yeah.
I did find out, though, that there were some people who were busy reporting me in various places. It was an anonymous group of lay people who reported me to the papal nuncio in Washington, D.C., We had to deal with that. And then even one of my own confreres here in the monastery sent a letter to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And so I got a letter from Rome chastising me. That was very painful. Very painful.
I can imagine. Absolutely. One of your own, one of your brothers. And the abbot, has he been supportive of you privately?
Yes, very supportive.
Yeah. And what of faculty, staff, again, students, if perhaps you don't rub elbows with the college community these days, but what's that been like? I
don't have a lot of contact with college students because I'm at the guest house. I do. I am a member of our faculty staff GLPT support group, and they've been supportive. And a number of other people on campus that I know have been very supportive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say generally the people who know me have been very supportive.
Yeah, good. You know, you've mentioned the pain in all of these refusals and being kicked out of, literally kicked out of 4 of the 5 dioceses in Minnesota. But I would imagine there's been some liberation in you as well, and that including when you first came out publicly. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the internal process of some positive outcomes?
Well, there's great freedom in being yourself, in not hiding, in not having to pretend that you think something that you don't think. Integrity has its own reward. It's for better or for worse, people know what I think, and if they like it, great, and if they don't, well, that's too bad, because at least it's honest.
Mm-hmm. 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 Have fellow priests come to you at all for guidance, for advice? Men who perhaps are feeling called to be faithful to their own integrity in some courageous ways?
I have talked to a handful of priests over the last few years, actually. A couple since I gave that talk. There are gay priests who would like to be able to be more open and honest, but nobody seems to be able to do that right now. Yeah.
It's really I know a number of active priests who are pastors who are gay, even priests in very progressive parishes, who are surrounded by people who support them, and when they preach, inclusion and full hospitality to their LGBT brothers and sisters, they're given lots of support from their parishioners, but it's still hard for these pastors to remain in ministry, because they're caught in that horrible place between keeping a job and being true to their own integrity.
Yep.
It's a difficult place to be.
And we do know that there are leaders in the church who will punish people if they don't follow the party line. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm an example in terms of GLBT issues. Father Roy Bourgeois is certainly an example as far as women's ordination is concerned. It's real clear that priests are not supposed to dissent from church teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just want to mention there are some priests who are logged in to our web show and I know have been courageous in their own neck of the woods. A priest I don't know, but I know of in California, and Joe Palacios in Washington, who's been a courageous priest as a professor and as a speaker and as an advocate, and we welcome him to the show tonight and thank him and all these guys for their own courage in speaking truth as they understand it, and doing so in some very clear and bold ways. So you're not alone, Bob, but
I know that.
We wish there were more of you.
So do I.
So I want to ask you. We're coming close to the Q&A, but before we do, I want to ask what's in your future, Bob. Would you say a little bit about what's coming right around the corner here?
Well, as a result of the negativity, I've decided to take a leave of absence from St. John's Abbey to spend some time in discernment and prayer, and I'm going to do that at an Episcopalian Benedictine monastery in New York. I visited them over Christmas, and they were wonderfully hospitable. And I think it's a good place for me to just go and live my Benedictine life, but see what it might look like if it weren't a Roman Catholic Benedictine life.
Let me ask you this. I mean, it's you're moving from one Benedictine community to the other. This is my interest because, again, I'm fascinated with Benedictine spirituality and Benedict's rule. What's been the most endearing practice or principle of the Benedictine rule for you?
I would say that, well, it reminds me of a story. I was doing a vocations talk once with one of my confreres, and somebody said, what's the best thing about community life, living in the monastery, and what's the worst thing? And the answer was the people. You know, the best thing about living in community are the wonderful people that you live with and the relationships that you form and that care and concern and support of one another. It's tremendous. On the other hand, the most challenging thing is living with those people, some of whom rub you the wrong way, and you end up realizing you rub some of them the wrong way.
No.
Oh yes, and so yeah, so community life is both a blessing and a challenge, but it's what I feel called to.
Well, you've answered my other question. What is most challenging? So thank you for that.
Okay.
So let's move to some of the questions. We have at least 6, and you're more than welcome, those of you who haven't submitted a question, to do so at any point here. Stephen from New York, how do you and all of us remain in the institutional church, or do we leave? How do you discern that? I'm wondering how to stay in a church when I disagree with so much on so many things. It's frustrating. Also, how do I not get mad at my pastor for not being like you, Father Bob?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to recognize everybody does the best they can. And, you know, if we want people to treat us with respect, compassion, and sensitivity, we need to do the same with them. You know, and if that means loving them into a more loving situation, then that's what we have to do. You know, everything Jesus says about forgiveness certainly applies here. We have to go the extra mile. We have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And if we know that, you know, somebody is really not being respectful, not being Christ-like, then we need to gently but firmly challenge them and let them know that we expect better. And I think parishioners can do that for their pastors. Parishioners need to teach their pastors how to be pastors. And you can do that while still being respectful. How do you discern whether or not to leave the church? I think every person has to ask that question for themselves. I've been asking that question for myself now since I resigned from campus ministry in 2006. And it's taking me 7 years to get to the point of saying, you know, I think maybe I should check out another option. So it wasn't a quick decision, and it's still not a final decision. I'm taking a leave of absence, but I haven't made a final decision yet. Right. I would say everybody needs to do what they think best, and we all need to avoid judging other people's decisions in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. I want to interrupt to mention that Bob's audio and visual are a little off on my screen. If that's the case for any of you who are attending and watching, let Logan know. Mention that in the chat box. It may just be my problem and my computer, and I hope it is. But if you're having issues, please let Logan know. Logan, speaking of, are you optimistic or pessimistic on the decision of the new Pope?
Well, as I said to someone today, I'm very hopeful that the Holy Spirit will attend the conclave, and because the Holy Spirit will attend the conclave, I am optimistic. God has not given up on the church, and the Spirit can do wonderful things. We saw that in 1958 when John the 23rd was elected. So I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic because I believe God is involved in the process.
Hmm. And speaking of that, Bob, where where is your hope for the church primarily focused in? Is it on a good new pope? Where is it?
My hope for the church is with the folks in the pews. I don't think, given that the institution changes very slowly from the top, that what's really going to make a difference is the folks in the pews living what they believe, being good Christians, good Catholics, loving like Jesus loves, and by that example, teaching their shepherds how to lead.
Hmm.
And I think groups like Dignity, like New Ways Ministry, like Fortunate Families, or like CALGM, the Catholic Association for Lesbian and Gay Ministry, are all doing
Hmm.
very good work in the area of gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgendered inclusion in the church. And that gives me hope.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and speaking of just regular lay Catholics, in our work to defeat the amendment in Minnesota, I was in a lot of living rooms of parishioners throughout the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. And I was constantly inspired by their passion, their focus, their single-heartedness. And most of these folks are straight and absolutely passionate about LGBT equality. And it was so
Mm-hmm.
inspiring. And I share your hope that that's where the hope lies.
Yes.
You know, God willing, we'll get a passionate and pastoral pope. But, whether or not we do, change is going to happen, I think, continue to happen from the grassroots level. So I'm totally with you. Marty Groshala from Chicago. When I came out my junior year at SJU, CSB, which is St. John's University and St. Benedict's in Collegeville, there was a small support group, which was a bit helpful. What kind of presence and support do LGBTQ students now receive there, Bob? Do you know?
Well, that group has grown and expanded over the years. They now call themselves PRISM, which stands for People Representing the Sexual Minority. It's a group of men and women from both St. John's and St. Ben's. They have a coming out week series of events. They sponsor talks and panel discussions and fun social activities. And they're doing a good job of supporting students who want to be out and are able to do so on our campuses. That's not to say that there aren't students who haven't reached that point yet, because I'm sure there are. But PRISM does a good job, I think, in reaching out to those who are out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Adolfo Mercado from Sacramento. Even if you're avid and supportive, why do you think your confreres are silent supporters?
Well, because as I found out when that one confrere reported me to Rome, what we do here at St. John's isn't isolated just to St. John's. I'm not going to get fired from being a monk because I got the support of my community, but I can get fired from doing any ministry off of campus. And we're a very actively involved community. We've got lots of pastoral outreach, and
Right.
so people, if they're too vocal, then they run the risk of encountering that wrath from conservative lay Catholics as well as conservative Catholic leaders. And so, they just, nobody wants to rock the boat. I guess I'm the only one that was foolish enough to do so.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're a good fool. We're grateful for God's fools. Michael Cook from Dignity Chicago, from Skokie, Illinois, asks, thank you for your ministry, Father Bob. Do you believe that some in the church hierarchy, particularly the Vatican, are homophobic because they are self-hating gays?
Yes, I do. And I'm not going to mention any names because I haven't talked to anyone personally. But I'm sure that's the case, because I know that's the case, anywhere. You know, I remember someone once saying to me, the people who are the most homophobic are those who are themselves gay but haven't come to terms with it yet. And so the image that they project out is one of disgust and hatred, when in fact it's them that they hate, and they need healing more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen that, you know, in the evangelical church, in Baptist church, in the Lutheran church. We've seen ministers who are adamantly anti-gay, and it's discovered that they in fact are gay, and it's happening, and it's happened in the Catholic Church time and time again. Mm-hmm. Marie from Columbus: I've ministered with several gay priests. With only one of them did I see his duplicity about sexual orientation spill over into other aspects of life. How did you maintain your integrity through these years? Also, any help for channeling anger into a positive impetus? That's a great question. Thanks, Marie.
Yeah. How did I maintain my integrity through these years? Well, I live in community, and I believe that, you know, we all have needs for personal intimacy, even if we don't have sexual intimacy. And so I think a good, healthy celibate knows how to meet his or her needs for personal intimacy, so that they can stay healthy, and so they can have a good, healthy emotional life. Now, you know, granted, I didn't do so well for a while, and that's how I ended up getting really depressed. But since that experience and learning what I've learned, you know, I know that we have to love people. It doesn't mean we have to be sexually intimate with them, but we have to be personally and emotionally intimate with people in order to be healthy human beings. And as I've done that, I haven't found the lack of sexual intimacy to be that much of a problem. Yeah, that I can deal with, as long as I'm attending to my emotional and psychological intimacy needs. Any help for channeling anger into a positive impetus? I've learned that anger is energy, and one of my therapists once said, you know, you can express your anger like a rocket ship or like a shotgun, and to just get angry and blast off like a shotgun, you know, all sorts of people get hurt. But if you can channel that energy into something that makes a difference, then that anger can be the motivation you need to go beyond the fear, go beyond the inertia that a lot of people feel, and that's part of why I got involved in things like PFLAG and like the Catholic Association for Lesbian and Gay Ministry. Was like, I'm not going to just sit here and be angry. I'm going to do something about it.
And if I may add something to that insight, Bob, and it's you know, as I have watched my own anger, it's easy to focus that anger on individuals, especially as somebody in the Catholic Church. There's a lot of easy targets to point at, and it's easy to demonize individuals. This bishop or that bishop, the Pope, whoever it might be in the church, and I find what's helpful, funneling my own anger, is funneling it from individuals to issues, to structural sin, not necessarily the sin of a particular individual, but the sin that's conveyed in teaching and in words and in action, that at the root of it is an injustice. It's not that person, but it's an injustice that needs to be addressed, and that's helpful to me, to distinguish between demonizing individuals and tackling the issue, the ground issue.
Right.
Joseph Palacios from the United States. Can you speak some more about Episcopalian Benedictines? And I'm sure others are interested in that as well, Bob. Are they willing to let you transfer in without problems and continue priestly ministry without having to be, quote unquote, ordained with them?
Well, at this point, we haven't gotten to the point of answering that question. They're willing to consider the possibility of my transferring as a Benedictine monk from one Benedictine community to the other. And that's part of what my leave of absence is going to be about, is discerning that move. How that affects priesthood remains to be seen. One thing I'm very clear on is during this year, I'm not going to be engaged in priestly ministry in the Episcopal Church. I'm still a Roman Catholic, and so basically I'm taking a vacation from priestly ministry for this year because I'm taking a leave of absence.
Right. Can you say a little bit about the Benedictine spirituality as you have briefly, up to this point, briefly observed in the Episcopalian community? Is it, do you sense that that the rule is lived in similar ways?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah, when I was there for the week after Christmas, I felt very much at home. Every Benedictine community does things a little bit differently, but
Sure.
we all follow the same basic rule of life, and so that means we pray 4 times a day. We share our meals in common. We share all of our goods in common. We care for one another. We play together. We work together, and that's the same in any Benedictine monastery wherever you go.
Jenny Naughton from Diamond Bar, California. I had a 90, or maybe she's meaning 90 discussions with my pastor about the conflicting comments coming from the pulpit, specifically one Sunday when the homily ended with, quote, all children should be loved and accepted for who they are, followed by the community praying for the definition of marriage staying between one man and one woman. His 2 main points were the Bible says, blah, 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 and the gospel message can be hurtful. How do I respond to him?
Well, I would say you need to share with him how you experience what he said. If you heard the words, all children should be loved and accepted for who they are, as good news, then you need to tell him that was good news. And if the rest of the message was not good news, then you need to help him understand why it feels that way to you. Because I think a lot of folks who are opposing same-sex marriage see it as kind of a separate issue from gay people's lives. It's like, I love you as a person, but I just don't want to see you married. And they don't understand why that's hurtful. And we need to help them understand that.
There is another question. Let's go to this one. Jim Grove, how did you minister to LGBT students before you came out?
Well, I took the stance of a very supportive ally. And those who knew I was gay, that was no problem. Because for a long time I bought the idea, which I think the church actually has said, is that priests should not come out because it hampers their ministry. Well, I no longer believe that, but there was a time when I did believe that, or at least I was willing to go along with it. So I was a very supportive ally. And, I did what I could to listen to people's experience. I did not judge them. I talked about what the church teaches, but I didn't feel the need to hit people over the head with it, because people know the more strict side of the church's teaching. A lot of people don't know that the church says we need to treat people with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. So in my ministry, I'm modeling that, and I would say that students got the message.
And I would say, Bob, that what I hear often from sort of chancery pulpits is leaders will mention, oh, remember we have to treat LGBT persons well, or they'll say gay and lesbian. I don't think transgender is in the language of leaders. Unfortunately, there is such ignorance on when it comes to the lives of genderqueer people. It's amazing the work that needs to be done there. But in any case, what I hear from leaders often is they will repeat that teaching. We must offer respect and sensitivity to our gay and lesbian sons and daughters, and avoid unjust discrimination. But it's always lip service. There's never any sort of follow through, sort of proving that teaching in action. And I think those statements demand challenge when they come from chancery pulpits to say, okay, you've said it, now how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Let's be specific here.
For example, I just think it's amazing that with all the bullying that's been going on, I've not heard one church leader condemn bullying.
Right.
And I can't imagine. I mean, bullying is not a good thing. But why are our leaders afraid to challenge it and to call people to live that respect?
Yeah. And there again, too, to your question, to your insight about funneling anger into action, that's just one of the things we can do. We may think that we have no influence, but to write or call, the office of our bishop or priest to say, why are you silent on this issue of bullying? And also looking across the ocean at what's happened in Uganda and what is happening in Uganda with these draconic, awful proposed bills confronting the parliament. And are we hearing loudly and clearly from the Ugandan bishops and ordained leaders? And I don't think so. I'm not hearing it. And there again, it's a real sadness.
Yes.
This question for you, Bob. You mentioned being chastised by the Vatican. On what grounds were you chastised? Was it official action or an informal communication? Any specific rule they stated you broke?
No, it was not official action. There was no rule that I broke. What I was reported for was being a board member of the Catholic Association for Lesbian and Gay Ministry. And
but that's an official ministry in the church, is it not? I mean, it's recognized by...
Well, it has been, but CALGM has been under investigation by the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Doctrine, and as you may know, our ordinary, because our office is in Oakland, California, was Bishop, now Archbishop Cordileone. and he threatened us with a decree saying we were not authentically Catholic. Somehow Rome seemed to accept that, but there's never been anything official done about it. It's never been followed through on. So CALGM still considers itself a Catholic organization, and we've still got diocesan members, as well as parish members and individual members who are all actively involved in the Catholic Church. But I was getting pressured by being a board member, and so to relieve my abbot and my community from having to deal with that pressure, I resigned from the board when my term ended in January. So I just finished a 3-year term on the board.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service to that good group of people.
You're welcome.
One more question. How do you think campus ministry, from Jim Grove, how do you think campus ministry can relate with secular gay-straight alliances on campus?
Well, again, I think it's very important to meet with people and to talk to them and to find out what kinds of things we can do together, how we can connect. I know, for example, on 2 Catholic campuses, there are some very good LGBT centers. I'm thinking of Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles and Georgetown in Washington. They have LGBT centers on their Catholic campuses, and I think they can help us think about how to do that.
Okay. Father Bob Pierson, thank you for being with us tonight. Again, another courageous move for you to appear on our Queer Catholic Faith show and to speak with great integrity, honesty, with compassion. I hear your non-judging spirituality coming through loudly and clearly, and that's a challenge for me, and I thank you for that. I want to thank you on behalf of all of the attendees for your past acts of courage. God bless you for that, and we wish you great blessing in this coming year as you take your leave of absence and step away from your ministry and your community in Collegeville. Godspeed you in this next year. Attendees, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I just want to let you know that all registered participants, those who attended and those who registered but may not have attended, will be sent a follow-up email with a link to the recording. We have recorded the show tonight, and we'll send you that link. And if there are others in your community or in your circle of family and friends that you would wish to see this, by all means send the link to them and they can view it for free. We'll also be sending you a survey, a very simple survey, and we ask your honest feedback. That'll be coming to you right after the hour ends. Dignity USA relies on membership and donations to fund most of our work on behalf of LGBTQ Catholics and our allies. And if you are willing and able to contribute $5 or $10 or more to help support this initiative and Dignity USA's other ministries, including QCF, we would be very grateful. You can make that gift online at www.dignityusa.com. That's dignityusa.com. Excuse me, dignityusa.org. And also I want to apprise you of our upcoming show. Delphine Bautista, who is a two-spirited transgender Catholic, and Delphine's mother, Rebecca Del Cristo, are going to appear on our show. Delphine's going to talk about their journey of acceptance and revelation and epiphanies about who they are as a person and a child of God. And Delphine's mother is going to talk about her journey of acceptance, which has not been easy. As her child has come out to her and been honest with her. So that will prove to be a very interesting conversation, and I hope you can attend. That will be March 19th. Again, finally, thank you all for your participation tonight. We hope you'll join us in the future and that you invite a friend or two. And again, Bob, thank you so much for being with us. Good night,
You're welcome,
everybody.
Jim.
God bless.
Good night.
Bye-bye.